Your friends, your friends. Radio friends again. Radio friends again. We've got a lot to share.
Well, welcome to another edition of Radio Friends again. I'm Steve Parker. This is the 15th, 15th, 15th of November. Oh my gosh. And I'm here in Berlin, Connecticut. We're going to kick the program off with our good buddy, Bill Rock. So let me swing things over.
We are currently in the house of Walt and Pam. They are busy people who love to entertain, and Pam is going to cook something for us tonight. What are you going to cook for us tonight?
Tonight I'm going to do fillets with brandy and shallot and mustard sauce.
Yum.
Okay, I'm ready to eat.
I'm ready to eat too. What can we do to help?
Pam is cooking for a group of friends at a dinner party that she and her husband Walt are having in their home. She first seasons the fillets on both sides. Then it's time to place them in a pan on the stove and first sear them, then cook these beautiful fillets from the 1-minute premium meat shopper. The moment everyone has been waiting for has
And
arrived.
here we are.
Pam and Walt's guests are about to be treated to a sumptuous dinner featuring the fillets from the 1-minute shopper.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Nice to be here with you. Pleasure.
That was great.
What a fantastic,
Yep.
really, really fantastic to be able to see Walt. And this is as I had mentioned, the 15th of November, and we're spending a little time this morning. This particular show, we lost just one of our greatest friends of Radio Friends again. And of course, man behind the strength behind the boobs, a bunch of old broadcasters. This past week, we lost Walt Pinto after a valiant battle of multiple health challenges over the last couple of years. So we kicked it off with thanks to Bill Rock, those wonderful fillets that that Bill brought us this morning with Walt and his wife Pam. Kind of a nice way to kick the program off. And at Bill, that was really terrific. It must have been fun to be working with them, huh?
Well, I'd used Walt for a number of things. Makes a great straight man. It looked a little like Leslie Nielsen when he was doing his stuff for me, because it was straight. And I figured that because of this group of people that know Walt personally, this was shot in his kitchen and his dining room. And Pam, of course, and Walt do a lot of entertaining. And this was part of a much longer video that's about 15, 20 minutes. It's an infomercial. And when I was looking for a couple that did a lot of entertaining, I immediately thought of Walt. And I called him, "Do you want to do this?" He said, "Sure." And that's how this came about.
Now, how many years ago was this one, Bill?
This is 2006, but I started working with Walt. Well, originally when I hired him at I worked with him at DRC, but at WELI back in the late 70s. And I started my company in 1980, the production company, while I was still doing radio in New York. And this particular client was a longtime client of mine, American Frozen Foods, and it was a subsidiary of it called 1-minute shopper. So that's how that came about.
That was really something, and that was a special gift that you were able to give to us, and we appreciate that, because nobody else like Walt. Let's just go around. I'll go around quickly this morning and introduce some of the folks that are already on the program. You just hear from Bill Rock down in Fairfield County, Stratford, right, Bill?
On Long Island Sound.
Okay, great. And Pete Salanda's here from Virginia, West Virginia. Where are you, Pete?
As far away from West Virginia as you can get. I'm in southeast Virginia. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia Beach. And interestingly, Walt and I were on opposite each other. Walt was on WELI while I was on WAVZ doing middays. And I never met Walt. He's one of those guys that you wish you had met. And I never met him, but we were on opposite each other.
Yeah, that's great. John Landry is with us from Marlboro. John, did you work with Walt?
No, I didn't work with, well, I have, yes, I did, because he was doing FM on DRC when I was board op. he used to do a lot of fill-ins, and that's when I was working with him.
Yeah, he could certainly wear a lot of hats. Ron Pell spent time with Walt.
Well, Steve, first of all, obviously, it's very, very sad. Walt was a great guy, and my I worked with Walt at DRC, of course, but my most memorable experience working with Walt was at the New England Broadcasting Institute.
NBI.
Now, people don't remember, but Walt, of course, worked for Dick Robinson as the executive director of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting for many years. Well, Dick Corson, Rick Buckley, and Charlie Parker, myself, and others started a broadcasting school called the New England Broadcasting Institute, and Walt was the executive director. We started that school and ended that school. Didn't last very long, but I'll get into that later if you'd like. But that's when I first started working with Walt. And then, of course, when he was program director at DRC AM in the 90s, I worked very closely with Walt, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, I know. My dad, of course, loved working with Walt, and he was Kent Clark there. Many of you have heard this because when he first went into my dad's office and saw that picture, saw Walt with those glasses.
Oh, yeah.
It really did look like Clark Kent. And said, from what I understand, we can't call you that, so we'll call you Kent Clark. And that was from the same mind that brought you probably the first sandy beach anywhere in the country. And of course, Brad Field, really what now a weatherman came on years later called that. But, so when he looked at him, he said, Ken Clark. So that worked. Dave, you obviously, oh, wait a minute, go back to Tracy. Tracy, did you have some dealings with Walt?
Absolutely. I met Walt years ago. He was working for WHYN AM programming the place, and we became good friends back in that era. That's got to be late 80s maybe. And of course, I knew him from being on the air, but it was the first time I had the opportunity to meet with him in person and chat. And I spent a lot of time at HYN, so we spent a lot of time together there.
Yeah,
nicest guy.
Dave, you had lots of time with Walt. I mean, business and personal. You never really stopped being connected to Walt since you first met, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we haven't. Actually, I first met Walt back in 1965 or 66 when he was at WI down in Bridgeport there. ICC. He was going under the name of Walt Peters, and he did a show called Talent Showcase. So I was playing in a rock band then and heard the show. So I sent them a note saying, "Would you like us to appear? Can we appear?" We got a notice back. Yeah. So the whole band went up there, and the studios were on the second floor. We're lugging our equipment up on the second floor in this not real big studio, medium-sized studio, and got everything. And Walt's running around putting mics here and there, and I'm watching him because at that point I wanted to get into broadcasting, and so we did the 4 songs, and then the following week we had to come back because we won that week. Well, when we came back, we had lost our lead guitar player. He was out sick, so I had to take his position. And then we had a lead singer who just started with the group, and we were the Sounds of Soul then. And let's say we didn't make it to the 3rd round, and I can see why. But Walt was interviewing us, and I said to him, "Yeah, I want to get into broadcasting." He says, "Oh, here, why don't you start now? Take over my place." I said, "No." I said, I'll give it some time." He says, "Oh, too bad." Anyways, so years later, I'm in the AM. I'm in the control rooms for the AM jock. I was also board hopping for the guys, and everyone was hollering, "Hey, Kent Clark's coming up. He's filling in for, I think, Terry Woods." "Oh, yeah, Kent Clark is coming." Oh, everyone was excited. I said, "Who the hell is this Kent Clark?" So anyways, I sit down, he comes in, he introduces himself, and I go, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And he goes to sit down. I had to take care of my job at the board. So about half hour later, I turned up the FM monitor, and I hear this voice, and I went, "Kent Clark, that's Walt Peters." So this is how I also met Charlie. So during a long record, I went over to see Walt in the FM studio. I said, "You used to be Walt Peters." And Walt was always a very, suspicious kind of guy, looking around like CIA or something. And so I said, "You go, oh yeah, and this and that." And I says, "Oh, okay." Charlie walks into the FM studio and says, "You can't be in here." I says, "Oh, okay." He says, "You have to be out in the hallway where everybody else, you can see him that way." Okay. Oh, all right, fine. Sorry about that. Go back, and I go back to my post at the console doing the AM show. And Charlie walks by and sees me at the console. Walks in, sees Jim English, and says, "Who's the guy behind the console?" Jim says, "Oh, that's Dave. He's been a part-timer here for about a year now." And because I hadn't met Charlie Corson or anybody like that. And Charlie goes, "Jesus." So he came in, and Charlie apologized for throwing me out of the FM studio. And I says, "Oh, no." And that was the history when I met Charlie and Walt Pinto at the same time.
Wow.
But also, Walt and I did a lot of talking. I was questioning him about the Connecticut State Police Auxiliary, which I knew he was a part of. I was a part of the East Haven Police Department Auxiliary. And we were just, exchanging different stories and that. So, yeah, Walt was a great guy, and I am definitely going to miss him. And I'm going to miss him when he says, "We'll talk." And
Right.
and that's it. So yeah, Walt's a great guy, and I'm so sad to see. I saw the changes in him within the year, and that was heartbreaking, and especially towards the end. And but Walt is in a good place, and so is Pam. Pam's journey and issues are now over for her. Now she needs to relax and then get other things in place. But I'm going to be up in Connecticut when the arrangements are final. And I talked to Pam yesterday. She said they should be soon. And my wife and I are coming up to Connecticut for the services. So that's that.
Yeah, we were Angela and I were supposed to go out with Pam. We were going to actually go out on Tuesday night because it was Tuesday night would be the boobs at Farrell's. So we were just going to meet over there, and that's when she sent me a note later on, said she wasn't going to be able to make it because Tuesday night Walt was really struggling and she wanted to be with him. And as we know, the call came out on Wednesday morning, and I heard from Pam, and David heard from Pam, and a few of us had. But he would be telling me to move on right now. Okay. All right, Walt. All right, Walt. Let's go over to Bob Craig from Philly. How you doing, Bob?
I'm good. I'm good. What's interesting about Walt is that Walt was a man of many interests. You could talk to him about a lot of things, and he was always focused on trends in the business and music. I got to know him through DRC. He was, I believe at that time, he was director at CSB, and he was also doing some part-time stuff upstairs at the radio station. So I got to know him off and on, and he really kind of helped me through the years in some work I was doing with the Dick station down in West Palm. We were putting together music, and Walt would kind of guide me along and help formulate some of the ideas that we were putting together in playlists and whatever. So he was always there to help. That was one of the great things about Walt. And as I mentioned about in my note, is that Dick McDonough always said he was such a loyal friend, and he could always count on Walt to come through for you. So those are my memories. We were never really close per se. I mean, obviously I've been out of the area since '79. So, but we stayed in touch off and on, especially through Dick and the radio station. So yeah, he'll be missed, and he was certainly a big part of Connecticut radio.
Yep.
Amen.
But the thing that was great about Walt, or one of the things was, that he really held the boobs together.
Yeah.
And of course Bill Hennessy and a lot of these guys that were the early days of the boobs. And but we also said, which is kind of what goes behind this whole thing with the Radio Friends again, is keeping the friendships alive, because we all managed to, most of us were able to always stay in touch with Walt one way or the other, whether it was through email or whether it was through the gatherings at Farrell's or whatever, you know, at least we can all say that, you know, we connected with him. And he also loved, from what Dave has told me, watching these programs afterwards. So even though he was struggling to keep his own voice and stuff, he was participating with us in spirit. There's no two ways about that. From what I understand, he never never missed any of our shows after we recorded them. Pat Sheehan must have some Walt stories. Pat, are you up in the as Ron Pell says, where he is, the Shire, or are you down in Texas?
I'm in beautiful Fairview, Texas, so I'm a little bit north of where Tracy is right now. Um, Walt was a very special link for me. Um, a few weeks ago, I talked about my journey from one place to another, and Walt was the person who greeted me after they shut down Channel 18, and I had started there in a fledgling news operation that was underway. They closed down. RKO lost its battle with the FCC, and we were all laid off. And Walt Dibble had called me and said, "Come on over." And Walt Pinto was at the time just starting there, starting as Kent Clark, I believe, probably in that same 1969 area that he was there, and doing FM. And he was just one of the warmest people who knew that I had gone through a struggle of just having had the station fall out from underneath where I was, and welcomed me back into radio from my little foray into TV for about 8 months or whatever it was that we had that program on the air. He was doing FM. The thing that really struck me was, I'm going to call it the curse that he had. He was good at so many things that
Right.
he did not play, at least at that time. He was not one of the primary jocks. He was the guy who would fill in for everybody, as people have related in our memories. He was always the guy who could step into almost any job.
He's a utility.
He asked me to come and teach at the school when he was working with Dick at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and it was just a great relationship. Had lunch with him in Middletown a couple of years ago before his struggles began, and it's been a difficult road for him and for Pam, and our hearts are broken in losing a good friend. As Bob Craig just said, he was really one of the most warm and trusting persons that I've met in the broadcasting world. He knew everybody. He remembered everybody, and he cared for this group probably as much as anybody could. So we're really going to miss him, but he's in a better place. God love him.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, he helped me get my start.
Oh, hang on a second. We gotta introduce you. Who have we got down there?
I never have time to do this. I'm always in sales meetings. I'm Jim Levin.
Okay, hi Jim.
Oh, Jim.
And I'm just a West Hartford kid who got his start thanks to your dad's brilliance. I was so blown away by Big D that I fell in love with it really is true. I fell in love with the radio business when I was like 6 years old, and now I'm owning my second broadcasting company. But I went to CSB in the high school class when I was in boarding school in Massachusetts.
Me too.
Saturday classes for high school students, right?
Absolutely. And I have to say, Dickie got to know my mother better than he got to know me, because my mom, the last time, my dad was a lawyer and my brother's a scientist and my mom was a writer. And it's like, you want to be a what? And I said, I want to be a disc jockey. I love this radio thing. And they said, you will not. And I said, yes, I will. So I went to CSB, and he was just so warm and so nice. They said, you've got the gift of gab. In case you can't tell, that was true. I was a crappy disc jockey, but I talked too much. Training on the Ampex 350, and I couldn't believe I was playing DRC jingles. When I practiced in the studio, I felt so like a big boy, and then Dickie got me a job working in the Manchester Parkade for WINF, It all started because of those two guys, and I'll never forget Kent Clark. What did he pass from?
He had multiple issues. Parkinson's is one of them, and then he also had cancer around the jaw,
Oh,
and that affected his voice, where he couldn't even talk. He could mumble, but I think Steve kind of put it to. He knew two words. What were those words, Steve? He get angry.
The last time I saw him, God damn it! Clear as a bell.
Yeah,
He was very, very, very frustrated. I got to see him 2 or 3 weeks ago. And also one of the things that I still feel is so important. I spoke to the people around there to talk about who this man was that was in that room, and I've still said, no matter what the medical facility is, or assisted living or rehab, they need to have a 30-second elevator speech on their clipboard that's as important as any other medical fact that tells you who that person is. Because if you go in there and you say, I understand you used to be on WDRC, watch the lights come on. And I think that's one of the things that really annoys me. Bob Ellsworth's wife, first Mrs. Connecticut. When I told people that, holy cow, or your husband was Bob Ellsworth, and I think that's what's so important. So when I saw Walt, I saw his frustration, but yeah, he said that very clearly to me. God damn it, which is also a great phrase of Charlie Parker when he got a little bit. That from what I mean, and I don't ever say these things, but that Jesus Christ. Everybody tells me that. You guys all tell me that.
We could make a jingle package out of all of that, don't you think?
Ted Daliku has been with us this morning, and Ted, Andrea Teresi says, where is Ted? So he misses you.
He's everybody's hairstylist. Whoever worked at DRC knows Andrea Teresi.
Pat knows him.
Headlines. But my memories of Walt are also reflect the warmth that everybody else has mentioned, because when I first came to DRC in 1973, Walt was actually, I think, Jim Harrington, you had just left FM, and Walt was filling in on middays until Charlie found somebody, and he was desperate enough to hire me. So, and I was desperately looking for a job after just having left Toledo after 4 years, and I needed refreshment in the Northeast. So when I went in, Walt easily stepped in, said, "Hey, this is how it goes." Told me that he was living in Glastonbury at the time in an apartment where I was in Hartford. He said, "Come on out anytime we're having a good time." He moved over, made it very easy for me to make the transition. And we started talking motorcycles because I had just started riding and he had been riding for a little while. And we wound up riding together around Connecticut, around the Avon area and stuff, and just having a wonderful time. And then later he even encouraged me when I was struggling to get a little more money as you know, DRC wasn't exactly pouring dollars out to the FM jocks in 1973. So he brought me into CSB also and said, "Come on, you can teach a couple of classes, make a few bucks on the side." So I worked with him there. And then later on, when I left DRC, or was moved out of DRC by Dick Corson, and spent 2 weeks down in ICC, working for Tiny Markle. But I think I went back to work at 91Q at RCQ. And Walt, I believe, was music director at the time, because Lee Manson was in name PD, but I think Walt was really running the show, and he was instrumental in getting me back up into the Hartford market and working at RCQ and doing the morning show there. And we grew closer then, went to dinner at their house. He went to dinner at our place. He and Pam rode around together. Interestingly, when I talked to him earlier this year, as you mentioned, Steve, he had trouble, and Dave rather, he had trouble speaking, and it was very difficult to listen to a guy who had been so fluent most of the time, could easily talk, as you point out, about many subjects. As Bob mentioned, he knew a lot about a lot of things, and was willing to share whatever he had. And it was painful to hear him struggle to say those things. We talked about his early career also. He was in Armed Forces Television in Fairbanks, Alaska, a few years before I went into Armed Forces Radio in Anchorage, Alaska. So that was another spot that we shared in the background. And when I talked to him about, motorcycles and stuff, he brought it up. He said, "Are you still riding?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he still had the motorcycle that he bought in 1974, the first Honda 750 four-cylinder motorcycle that we rode around together on. He said, "I still have it in the garage, but it hasn't been ridden for a long time." And I guess we can hope that he's riding it now. But a great guy, and he will be definitely missed, not only by the industry, but by the people he knew around him.
Yes, now he's one of heaven's angels. Sorry.
That's right.
But we're talking a little bit this morning, reminiscing about Walt Pinto, aka Kent Clark at DRC, and as you can hear from what everybody's saying, Walt was a true utility man. He really did. I know that was a big thing with my dad. He could plug him in anywhere if somebody didn't show up. And now, from what you guys are saying, and he was pretty much a utility man in life. Whatever it was, he embraced it. And Bill, it was great, Bill Rock, that you started out this segment with them hosting, because what everybody's saying here, Walt was all about hosting. Every time I'd see him, we got to go to lunch. Every time, everybody.
Always, always.
Right.
And he had to have milk with lunch.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. He was whenever we went to lunch, because he was taking care of the DRC AMSPD, and then they bumped me up to FMPD. So we go out to lunch 2-3 times a week, and he always had to have a glass of milk with lunch. That was just part of the Walt's diet. I'm not sure why, but he loved it.
Well, so you can't say they bumped you up. They bumped you over, because I was doing the AM and you had to be over. So you were moved over, you bumped over. That's the way everything always was there. But Dave Nagel, who's Plainville, Connecticut.
Yes. Yeah. Sunshiny Plainville today, where it's actually nice. Sun is warm, and it's not windy for a change. So.
Lee Gordon, you spent a lot of time with the Boobs and Walt, but what was your connection with Walt?
Well, I first met Walt at 91Q, Golden 91Q. He was, I guess he was doing the middays. I was doing weekends there. That had to be, well, it was after POP went all news, so 76 or 77, something like that. And he was already, his fame had preceded him. I was already aware that Kent Clark was kind of a legend in the market, but so I got to know him during our encounters at 91Q, and then anytime I would see him after that, we got to get together for lunch. And we never actually ended up getting together for lunch, but we always had plans to get together for lunch the next time it was convenient for one of us. The last time I saw him was a couple of years ago at the radio reunion at Farrell's, and by that time it was a bit of a struggle for him to speak, but we had a pleasant, if brief, conversation there, because obviously it was an effort for him to speak and be heard and understood at that time. But it was great to see him, and he, I can't add anything more to what everybody has said, that he was just such a really good guy.
Lee, it's interesting because he was holding court at that corner table out on the deck, and each of us would come over, and yes, he was obviously struggling, but I think that was probably a really nice moment for him. It's somewhere inside with all of us who knew him and cared for him. I'm going to say paying homage, because we knew that he was struggling at that point.
Exactly.
That was a nice moment, though.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, he got. That's the thing, when you think about this, Walt really was, no matter who was speaking to him, he always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room.
Yep.
He just had that, not about him. And of course, we know Dick Robinson's been struggling, and our thoughts and prayers with Dick. And I know he loves to watch these programs afterwards. And, of course, him working right up boy, until he really was having problems with his voice down at Legends, and he would do all of his, down at Dick's station down there. So that was really something that he got to stay with it as long as he possibly could. Ed Bruder, New Hampshire, right, Ed?
Yes, indeed. Good morning, Steve. Like many of you guys, I probably first knew Walt as Kent Clark as a listener. He started at DRC in June of 1967. And I'm not sure whether it's your dad didn't find the right niche for him, but as Pat said, he worked about every shift on both AM and FM. In those days, they had separated the FM 12 hours a day because of the FCC rule changes. And Walt did about every possible shift there was to do. He and I both lived in Glastonbury at that point, but I never met him in person until I did that Man from Mars gig in the summer of '73 at DRC. Walt at that time did a favor to me, having no reason to do it, except that he was a good guy. He let me have the key to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting so that I could spend an all-night session there producing an audition tape, because I was not a student there. But he knew I wanted to get into radio full-time, and he arranged to get the key to me because he knew who I was through doing the Man from Mars thing. And then he and I just stayed in touch over the years. In recent years, we had talked by phone about once a month. There was never any opportunity for lunch because it was too far to commute from Hartford to New Hampshire. But we used to exchange air checks on a fairly regular basis, and he always knew where everybody was. If you needed to find out, hey, whatever happened to so-and-so, Walt would know. So he will be very much missed.
Speaking of New Hampshire, I believe that Walt worked in, I believe that.
Now down 226. This is CBS News.
You are right, Lee. He worked at the same station that Lee did, but earlier it was WBBX in Portsmouth. And Walt was there about 1964, and Lee got there about 1969 or 70, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah. Our mutual friend Ray Fournier told me that he had worked with Walt back in at WBBX. That Walt had worked in New Hampshire before he got to the Big D.
And before that, he had worked in northern Maine. He was from north of Bangor, the town of Orono, Maine.
Wow.
And he actually started his high school radio station. This is back in like 1956.
Well, everybody, just because you think, between Tracy Carmen and the world of jingles and Ed Bruder, the world of talent, he's all of this stuff is literally at Ed's fingertips. And if you ever want to see a nice, really what other comments people had to say about Walt, please go to WDRCOBG.com. And for those of you who haven't, I think most of you have, but you get to hear some air checks from Walt and catch up on some of the history there because of Ed collecting things like that. So Ed, thank you for all of that, for being the keeper of the flame, like a few of you are. I know Lee Gordon's very great with keeping that together, and Tracy and Bill Hennessy's down there. I see Bill and Dick Calt is always out there checking up on all of us. Dick is he down in are you down in Westport under the dome, or what have you got going on down there, Dick?
Yes, I'm down here under the geodesic dome. And it's just beautiful. It's just really beautiful. Now I don't know, it's about 45 degrees. The sun is out. It's only about 30 degrees colder than I would like it, but hey, that's why we pay our taxes and get our dome. But I will say, first of all, I apologize for not being able to join you every week. Life keeps jumping up in the middle, but I love it when I'm able to join you guys and hear about your past, especially. Walt, I knew Walt very well as a personal friend. I didn't work with him professionally, except we did. Barry and I did some work with him, I believe it was in the 80s. I don't know that we worked with him at all, Ron, when you were there, because that was a bit later. But I think it was in the 80s. I did a little work with him and we hit it off, and then we just spent most of our time having lunch and having a good time and just knowing each other personally. I think, first meet him maybe at CSB in the 70s, maybe. And but he was just one of the warmest, nicest people that I'd ever really gotten to know in the business. And he just he always had stories, and I loved listening to them. But he was really curious about my Detroit background, and we talked about broadcasting in Detroit, and he and I joked a little bit about the fact that he became Kent Clark, and I was Rocky Stone in Detroit, and nobody got what Rocky Stone meant, but everybody could get what Kent Clark meant. But I found him to be one of the most genuine people that I'd ever worked with and known. He did. I'm trying to remember whether he did actually some. I'm not sure if it was voice work or if he did some arrangement work for us on a couple of our syndications that we did for some clients back in the 80s. But we kept the relationship going. I remember seeing him, as somebody had mentioned a couple of years ago in Portland at the lunch. We spent some time, and I visited him many years ago when he was in the hospital suffering from other things, and we just kept in touch, even though we didn't have the same connection that you guys did from a professional point of view. It was much more of a personal relationship, as you also had with him, and he will be missed because he's just one of the nicest people. And I feel very, very badly about his passing, but understand completely after all he's gone through in the last few years. But we certainly will remember him.
It's tough. I know it just seems so cruel that a guy with pipes like that, and even my dad, and so many people that have that gift. And I thought some prayers are with you too, Bill Rock. I know you've been going through some challenges, as we heard your pipes earlier, and we thank you for still coming in here. And as I know that you guys spent a lot of time, you and Walt had some great conversations over the last short time, right?
Walt and I, for about 2 or 3 decades, we would talk to each other once, maybe twice a day, every day. That's how close Walt and I were. I almost didn't do today because it was very sad.
Well, you hang on there, Bill, and I thank you for the video. And I know it is a very tough day for a lot of us, but as I know, you guys right up until the end, you shared a lot of the challenges together too. So God bless you for being here. It really means a lot, Bill. Let's see.
Steve, one of the guys on this group of people today who probably has known Walt the longest is Bill Hennessy, because Bill was working at DRC in the newsroom in '67 when Walt joined at the station.
Hey, Bill, I see you down there. I don't see you, but I see that you're on with us. Good morning, Bill. Okay, let's see. We've got Bob Marks, Bart Mazzarelli. You spent a lot of time with Walt.
Well, yeah. Well, prior to my 8 years at Big D, I worked at WRCH from 1970 to 75. And when we changed formats to WRCQ 91Q, I was on the original staff, and they hired Walt to come in, and also he was on the air. I think he did the midday show, and I did afternoon drive. Of course, that was so long ago, my brain isn't functioning that well. But during that time, we got to be friends, and like everybody else describing Walter was just a warm individual. He was funny. We had a lot of laughs together. We both worked doing production because that was part of our gig over there at WRCH. And we just enjoyed each other's company. I got to know him really well. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go out, for lunch or dinner or go over his house and all of that. I wish I had, but I don't know why. I guess I was too busy being a husband and dad, and had that commute to Southington. But listening to all the stories, it matches up with what I know about Walt Pinto. And, of course, we had phone conversations down through the years, and saw him at the Big D reunion, our 100th anniversary of WDRC. And it was kind of sad to see how his health had deteriorated, but we still had a really nice, engaging conversation. When I was at WRCH, I had a chance to work with 2 of my early radio heroes. Lou Terry, who was famous for the Terry Round at WPOP, and then Kent Clark at Big D. And getting to know these guys and work alongside them was a genuine thrill for me, a kid growing up in New Britain.
Hey, Steve,
He's
While
got
while
rusty pots.
while we're waiting for Bill to figure out the mechanics involved here, I'm going to throw out maybe a weird question. Anybody listening to this broadcast today, our program today, is going to say, "Couldn't the guy hold a job?" How many state?
Yeah.
Why? It's a serious question. Why did Walt work at so many places? Because he was so valuable, and he was the ultimate utility guy, could do anything, but he kept going from one station to another. Anybody want to opine on that? I'm
I can
curious.
opine on that. I know Walt Pinto, to his credit, knew so much about so many things. For example, does anybody remember that he was the sales manager at oh my God, the Middletown WLS,
W.
LIS?
LIS, yeah,
in
that's
LIS.
right.
Saybrook.
He
Yeah,
worked there for a
Yeah.
few years as sales manager.
right.
I remember at one point he actually had a Valpak. He was selling direct mail. Remember, he came in to DRC, to the sales department, and he made a presentation about combining direct mail and broadcast. We were trying to figure out how we could make some money combining the two, and he was doing direct mail. But I think Walt was a very opinionated guy. I mean, I remember I would have lunch with him. We all had lunch with him. That was Walt.
Yeah.
His favorite activity was lunch. I used to meet him at a place called Fiore in Middletown on Main Street, a
Yep.
really good Italian restaurant. And we would meet there routinely for a while there, probably once a month, and have lunch. And he had great opinions about, and of course, he was a great broadcaster in terms of programming knowledge. I mean, he was program director at DRC AM. He did programming for Dick Robinson. He was on the air at the station in West Palm Beach, but he always would critique how the music, if he wasn't programming, how the program director was programming the music incorrectly, and how they shouldn't be playing this artist that many times and do that. And I think that may have gotten him into a little trouble along the way because he was so opinionated. But the truth is, he knew so much about so many different things. I think that was one of his gifts. So that could be one of the reasons he went from one place to another.
You know, it's an interesting point that you bring up about that, because one thing I do remember, and because I did know him in the 70s, that he and I did have conversations from time to time about what makes PLR tick. We would get into not the mechanics of how the station operated, but into the theory about how we worked our music. And I trusted him, you know, and I learned a lot in my conversations with him because he would talk about, you know, his history and so forth. But to your point, he was always very curious and very opinionated, and a true student of the medium, as well as, in my view, a professor of the medium.
He was opinionated. Yeah, he was opinionated, but extremely caring, and he didn't have a mean bone in his body. He was just always wonderful to talk to.
Clark, let me just tell people that we've got you here.
Oh,
This
hello.
Clark Smith could be anywhere in the country today because he's always fooling around with something electrical. Where are you?
I'm in New Hampshire.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Clark.
Yeah, no, not at all. It was just I got to know Walt, well, first by listening to Kent Clark in college in the 60s on WDRC, but we really became friends with the Boobs. And through the Boobs that was happening in Hartford for many years, I got to reconnect with Tom Ford, who hired me for the first time in '66, and Glenn Colligan, who I was told to show the ropes to. And there was this great relationship that Walt had with Sal and Jemmy, the CBS Sony master, who is still alive and well in Naples, Florida. And we spoke about Walt the other day. But Kent Clark was just a legend. He did everything for everybody. Sharing a half dozen lunches with him were always very special. And the last time I saw him at a Connecticut radio reunion, his last words to me were, "We'll talk."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
We should point out, because it's been mentioned a number of times, and Bill Hennessy's mic isn't working, that the boobs, stands for bunch of old broadcasters.
Broadcasters.
Oh, that's what you meant when you said he was keeping the boobs together. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it was great, and he did a masterful job with that. And the crowd that came all the time, including Bill Hennessy, was just terrific.
Yeah, well, Bill's invitations and reminders of the next boobs meeting were just classic. You held on. I mean, to some of the most talented emails that ever went out, and they were so entertaining that even if you didn't get to the boobs, you still felt like you were in the middle of it. So, and Bill down at the Arch Street Tavern and having the jazz down there and all that kind of stuff, which was good, and it was also challenging sometimes because, as you can see here, we all like to kibitz back and forth. But Bill, I'm glad to see you down there this morning, even though you're having some technical issues. It's just great because we know you can hear everything we're doing here, and that's okay. That's okay. That's we just appreciate so much because I think Bill was the very seeds of the boobs. He was actually when they were just a training bra, and now then they became the boobs. So we appreciate that Bill. We've got the judges here. Hal, how are you this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm here in the deep in the woods in the Salmon River State Forest in Marlborough, Connecticut. And I guess it's my loss. I didn't know Walt that well. I knew of him for many, many years, but I only met him once or twice at some of the reunions. So I can't give you any opinion on knowing him. I didn't know him that well. I just met him a few times and had some nice conversations with him, but my loss.
Well, it's interesting because he did have such an impact, especially with music. We going back to that a little bit because Ron, you were saying how he was always critiquing, because I know he was always critiquing legends with Dick.
Well, I just go back to the days of the New England Broadcasting Institute. The funniest things I can remember are the interaction between Dick Corson and Walt Pinto. Now, you couldn't find two diametrically opposed people in general as Dick Corson and Walt Pinto. And Walt would go in and as he was the director of the school, he would, we would have these group meetings about, how can we get better? How can we get more students? How can we do all this? And, Walt would make his points. And Corson had this strange quizzical look on his face, like he just couldn't understand where Walt was coming from. And it got to be very, very funny. It just was. But, that was Walt. Walt would, he would just tell you what he felt. This is what I think we should be doing, and this is how we can do it. And, that was it.
So passionate about everything he was doing. I remember when you brought that up again, Ron. I remember the Valpak, and a lot of times, just making that transition, because we all know that print is the worst, and it's really underneath most of the bird cages and everything else, and you wrap your dead fish in it. All the
Those are
wonderful
newspapers, Steve, not Valpak coupons.
Oh, sorry, never mind. Take that back. But going up against print sometimes could be a challenge. But Walt seemed to make it all seamless because he was able to say cross promote the two. Be able to use the radio, because we found that more often than not when you put spots together and somebody would say, "Geez, I love my newspaper ad. I would ever do radio." They'll say, if you ask that, great. Why don't we double or triple the amount of people that see it by using radio? To say, go look in the Sunday's Hartford Kern or whatever. So I actually Kent understood the crossover between.
I don't think Jim Harrington has said anything, and I don't know if they.
Oh no, we had Jim earlier.
No, I knew Walt back in 1970, and when I first went to work at DRC, and what I was amazed, Walt never changed. Walt in 1970 sounded the way he sounded. I saw him last in 2016 at that Middletown get-together for the reunion, and we talked constantly on the phone until about 2 years ago, and then for no good reason, we just got away from calling regularly, and that was the last time I talked to him. And I think we just kept thinking we'd talk again. And those things happen. But one of the things that that had a lasting effect on me, and no one's mentioned this here, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but back in the 70s when I was at DRC, Walt had an incident that almost killed him. And I'm trying to be gentle with this, and I'm not going to get into specifics. I think a lot of you know about this.
Yep.
And I expected when I saw Walt, I was a very young man. When I saw Walt after this, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know whether he would be a changed guy, whether he would be an angry guy. To me, what amazed me was how well he got through that whole shocking process and didn't lose anything. He still remained Walt, and we never discussed it. I mean, maybe early on I mentioned how you doing and stuff like that, and then after that, it was forgotten, and he went on with his life. He didn't carry it with him like it was a burden or a weight. It's like he dismissed it. He got through it. God got him through that, and he went on, and it left an impression on me that literally has left. I think about Walt. When I think about Walt all the time, even when I talk to him on the phone, I think, my God, this guy almost got killed. He came a fraction of an inch away from getting killed, and yet, listen to him. He still was talking about radio. He still was talking about Florida. He was doing the remote broadcast, I guess, from a studio in his house and sending it down to Florida every day, and he loved it. And he talked about, to me, Walt was about 10 years older than me, I think.
Mid-80s.
But I never felt that way.
87.
Yeah, Walt, he was 11 years older. I never felt that he was much older than me. He was a contemporary kind of guy. I thought the world of Walt. He was, the thing about this silly business, and I think this program is an example. We can go decades without seeing each other physically, and yet there's a bond that we have from having worked together in this business that is unbreakable. I mean, I talk to you guys when I talk to Ted and Dave and Steve and all you guys that I've worked with. It's like I saw you yesterday, and Walt was that kind of guy. So when I heard that he passed, it really touched my heart. Like this was a good guy. The world would be a little different without that character in this world anymore, and that's how his loss affected me. I even get a little watery. It's been years since I saw him in 2016, but I still had that contemporary feeling with him. Like when I talked to him on the phone, by the way, it was like I talked to him yesterday. There was no how you been, gee, where you been. It was just, he was Walt. Anyway.
And you know what, Jim, when you and I connected a few years ago, it was the same thing. Our average phone calls are 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Thank God we're not charged long distance anymore.
Oh my God. But I used to have Jim Harrington come on the phone when Angela and I would be driving up to Cape Cod, and he could tell us what exit we're at on 95.
I drove that route enough.
We'd say, Angela, go find out where we are on 95. Call Jim Harrington. But no, Bill Hennessy, I saw that you tried to get on another way. I don't know if you have an iPhone or not, Bill, but if you do have an iPhone, you can get on your email. If you get on your iPhone, you can click on to the link on your email and be able to come in from your iPhone. I know quite a few people do that, so you might want to try it. There you go. Just go into the email that we sent out, grab the latest Zoom link, and that should bring you in. Be patient, yeah. But I think if you see this morning's Zoom link, the last one I sent out, I believe.
Hey, Steve, if I can jump in, what Jim was referring to, this incident that Walt had many, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
I think most of us know about it, and we don't have to go into the details of it. But I think one of the things that has been, and when I'm mentioning it right early on, we did, but you think about what Pam has meant to Walt over all these decades, and he met her. She was a student at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. and they've been together for, I guess, 50 years or so, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken,
close
and
to it.
maybe more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Ron,
she's
close to
really
it.
been the rock in his life.
Ron, I can tell you that's one of
Oh,
the things that
absolutely.
I was thinking about was the fact that part of the thing that helped him through that time was Pam, because that's when
Yeah.
when I got to know him, and I also met my wife Pat around the same time when I went to DRC. So we both had gone into new relationships around the same time, and Patty is still my wife right now. It's 49 years now. I'll be 50 next year, and I think that would be about the same time that Walt and Pam had gotten together, and they both help you through the times that that run you in this business. Pat, you mentioned, that Walt had gone to so many different stations during that time. If you look at all the faces that are on this program, how many people have worked at one station their entire life? I mean, there
Nobody.
a lot of people
No one
have
here.
done that. So it's this kind of this industry that draws a certain kind of person to it who is, and I'm not speaking about myself necessarily, but all the people that are on the screen right now who can do so many things in so many different ways in so many different places and still make people satisfied that listening to them, make people satisfied listening to their stations, and enjoy communicating with them in the ways that we did. And also, be able to make a living from it, which is an incredible thing to move so many different places and still be able to make a living and where you're going. And to understand that so many other people in other industries just don't seem to be able to do that. They can't do that. They can't move themselves from one place to another as we did and still be able to exist and still be able to thrive.
It's funny. It's funny. Dick McDonough said to me once, "There's 300 people in radio, and they all shift from station to station."
Yeah, right. That's about right. You can almost right. You might make the list a little bit longer, but essentially that's it. I mean, it's
Must be willing to relocate.
yeah, exactly.
Don't put in a swimming pool, or you'll be fired the next week.
You'll never see
Several
it.
of you guys have mentioned the versatility that Walt had, and I'd be interested, Pat, to know if he ever mentioned this to you. For about a year and a half, they moved Walt to DRC News, which he didn't like, but he did it. And he did it well because he was so competent at everything. Did he ever happen to mention that to you? Because I think you guys overlapped in news for a while.
He was not part of the news department, although, and I saw Ed on the write-up that you did that he was there during those years. So if so, it would have been a very close
He was
back and
utility.
forth.
He was a utility.
Again, God has a new utility player here. This is just, he could step in and do that. But he was not in the news department when I was there. He was just off to my left at the time, working in the FM studio. And I guess that's why he mentored me when I came in. He probably knew a lot more about what I was doing there in radio news because I hadn't done that for a while. And he was just such a warm person though. But yeah, he could come in and fill in and do just any job in the place.
I gotta roll back to what Lee was saying about those broadcasting ads. They were hilarious. Another thing, not only must relocate, but they would say in their ad, can run tight board. And I'm thinking, here's a program director and a general manager sitting down deciding whether or not to hire this person, even though he had a police record. But look, Jack, he can run a tight board. Let's hire him.
No floaters or drifters.
Oh, yeah, that's another one.
I see Bill is holding up his phone. Is someone give him some direction on what he's supposed to do with the phone?
How about we work next week around Bill Hennessy and figure out how we can make him the center box on our Brady Bunch here, and we can get him to talk to us about all of the things that he's been through himself.
I posted a couple of pictures of Bill from his heyday from the WTIC files up on Facebook. I don't know if everybody saw those.
I think it's a great idea, Pat, because Bill, like Walt, knows everybody in Connecticut broadcasting and where they are and where they've been.
I have to say one thing about Walt. I don't know if you ever been over to his house.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go over there, I'll say something about TV. Oh, did I show you my pictures of my African trip? And he takes about 10 minutes to find the video. Then he loads it up in the machine. Then we're sitting there and he's narrating these videos. And then I'll go over there another time. He says, "Oh, did I ever show you the video of my trip to Disneyland or to Disney World?" And he'd be, sitting there, and I go, "Yeah, oh, it's good, Walt." But God bless him. God bless him. I have to run, everybody. See you all next week.
Here, Dave.
See you,
See you,
Dave.
Dave.
Dave, don't run yet, because I've got Bill Hennessy on. He's going to come through my phone, so let's try to see if we can listen to some of Bill's memories. Bill, go.
I don't have the time. I gotta.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Bill.
I'm glad because I don't know what I'm doing. And at least I'm talking on my cell phone. And we're talking about Walt, which I thought would happen this morning. And after hearing from Pam yesterday, I expected this to happen today. The latest that I know is probably the same as the rest of you know. And that is that Pam is the one that needs the help. I wish that Walt had gone to the Veterans Administration months ago, because I think they would have been helpful to him. But he was in denial for the longest time. And he had told me a couple of years ago that he was analyzed as having had brain shrinkage. Well, I looked that up, and sure enough, there is such a diagnosis available on YouTube. And I think it was the beginning of his Parkinson's diagnosis. And then when he got the cancer of the jaw, that's when he couldn't talk anymore. And everything I was hearing from all of the comments that are being made by all of you guys, and the wonderful job that Ed Bruder, on putting together the pictures of Walt when he was up in Bangor. His parents ran a drugstore in Bangor.
He did.
And he did work in Portsmouth. I first met him in New London when I was I think I was still at WTIC back then. And I don't know how we got together, but somehow we ran into each other in New London, and we became acquaintances. It led to what I would now describe as a very close friendship, because he kind of replaced Charlie Parker as my beach buddy down at Crescent Beach in Niantic. And we were always together at our house, and then at his house at what I would call the entertainment capital of the world, Gad Pouch Road in Cobalt, Connecticut. Yep. He had a studio there, and it was always a mess, but he always knew where things were, and he had every recording available. It was like Paytel all over again, right in his studio. He could give you any song you wanted. And I remember distinctly, one of my favorite songs was Artie Shaw with Helen Forrest, All the Things You Are. I mentioned it to him. The next thing I knew, it was on my Chromebook. So he was that able to do things that I never could figure out, which is obvious by the fact that I'm not visible to you, but I guess I'm talking to you. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying. And I see that Steve's head is nodding in agreement. So it must be working to that extent at least. And I'm very appreciative of all the comments that I'm hearing on behalf of Walt and the Radio Friends again and the Broadcasting Foundation of America. If anybody needs help now, it's Pam. And I say that because she is not in the best of health, you know. She has to use a cane to walk. She only retired at the beginning of August. And after all these years of working, and I don't know how Walt ever afforded it, but he went to lunch with everybody I ever heard of. Every day. It was always, let's go to lunch. And we did a lot of that, but most of it we did at his house and at my house, because we would go back and forth between East Hampton and Niantic. The funeral home that's handling his situation is Spencer Funeral Home in East Hampton. I went online this morning. I did not see the obituary in the Current, but I wouldn't be surprised if it appears tomorrow. I do not know, and maybe Dave Overson does, whether there's going to be any kind of a service or anything, because Dave and I have we sort of planned to go up and attend if that's appropriate. But if we're going to, we've got to do it pretty fast to make arrangements. So having said all of that, having echoed everything and dittoed everything that everybody else has been saying that we've lost a great member of the family. He was one of the first bunch of old broadcasters, which I formed probably 22 years ago. And he kind of took it over when I stopped driving at night, which was only in the last year or so, because I'm going to be 90 years old, you know, so I'm probably the oldest one of the whole group. But I go back to before the days of DRC, when I was at the old-fashioned WTIC, which was a network-type station. And back in those days, so was DRC, until Charlie changed it all around and made it the powerhouse it became in the listeners' minds. It was always a powerful station. It used to have big red letters, WDRC, on the outside of the building of the Connecticut Bank and Trust Company on Main Street, 750 Main Street, interestingly, in downtown Hartford. And I remember being in high school and being on there with Youth on Parade or some such program. And that was way, way back. But anyway, that was before Walt came to Hartford. He was in New London, as I've repeated myself, and we've lost a great member of the family.
And you know, Bill, what's interesting, and the Walt was the same way. You never put the microphone down. You never walked away from the camera. I know we can still see your infomercials running on TV, and I know you've been very, very active. You've never.
Can I just say one thing, Bill? I haven't. I used to watch you all the time back in the '70s on TV. I think you were you might have been were you at Channel 30 back then, or were
Channel
you at
30?
I was at 30 after being at 3.
Yeah, I was just a young jock, and I got my news from you, and I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking, my God, the guy's voice hasn't changed. The guy sounds like you could go on and do it again today. Holy smokes!
You know, in listening to Bill speak, I did not count one or ah.
I was thinking the same thing.
One of the nice things about the whole business of broadcasting is there's no reason to leave it. The only reason that Walt left it is because of the local problems he had. And when I think about Walt having that problem, I think back inevitably about Charlie having the same problem. Two of the best voices you could imagine were disabled by illness. It's a shame.
But you know something, Bill? You mentioned your pals down at Crescent Beach, because I can't even count how many times you'd be over there. Of course, always a gorgeous tan, wearing that Speedo. No, wait a minute, maybe it wasn't a Speedo. But you'd always come over and you'd sit down there right in the sand, never mind a beach towel. You'd sit right in the sand and you'd be rubbing your hands through the sand. The two of you would go on, and I could be out there drowning underneath the raft, but you guys would still have a conversation. I thought it was great that you always stayed connected with him and Walt.
Well, your father and I always talked about the old days, of course, and we were commiserating about the radio changes that were occurring. But that was the closest relationship I had at the beach. And then when your father left us, Walt kind of took his place as far as being in Niantic. But we were always at our deck in the back of the house, which you and Angela would remember.
Yeah, because the train was only 3 feet in front of your deck.
That's right. We were separated from the water by the Amtrak Railroad, and they're great memories. And that's why I'm so concerned about Pam, because she has to put up with all of the details that go through. I hope that the VA and I hope the funeral home can help her. Oh, well, I was just mentioning, I know that we can count on you, Steve, to help Pam the same way you helped Rosemary Ellsworth. Now, I don't mean driving down to East Hampton, Cobalt all the time, but I knew that you took Rosemary to church every Sunday, which was very, very nice of you. And because she was very church conscious at St. Thomas in West Hartford.
Well, yeah, and then after that, we went over to the other one, to St. Peter Claver, and that was actually at the end of the street that the two of them used to live on. But you know, that was something that we said in passing. You know, I mean, Bob was worried about her getting to church, and I'm like, okay, well, I figured I'd check in on her every now and then. Well, it got to be 5 years, and I remember going up to the I'd go to the headstone. She couldn't get out of the car anymore, but we'd go to the cemetery, and I could see that smile and the gleam in Bob Ellsworth's eye. And I would look at him and I go, 5 years, Walt, 5 years.
Wow.
But you know something? It is the friends and everything right now that that Pam needs to hear from. So I hopefully Dave will be able to put this into a format that she can listen to, because the two of them were inseparable. And at a time when no one thought that Walt should get behind the wheel anymore, Pam would let him do it. And I'm sure she knew how important that was to Walt to be able to drive over to Farrell's.
And I would warn him, I hope your license plate is up to date and your stoplights work, because if a cop ever stops you, he will take away your keys immediately as soon as you try to say something. That's how bad it got near the end.
Yeah.
But as recently as a couple of months ago, he was still organizing the boobs at Farrell's, which I wasn't able to attend because I don't drive at night. And the same group of people, John Landry was a regular, and Dave Overson was a regular, and I know you got there as often as you could, Steve.
Yeah.
And Joe Nesty would show up, and Tom Ford, who, by the way, needs to be informed about the DRC Radio Friends again, because I don't think he's connected.
I'll check with Dave again, but I'll have to go back and look. I definitely want to make sure he's getting this. Yeah.
Yeah, because Tom, I sure would appreciate it. And these are all some of the old timers. Of course, a lot of the boobs have gone to the great studio in the sky. And we used to have a much bigger attendance, but that's been replaced by what you're doing on Friday mornings, for which I'm very grateful, because every time Dave sends me the complete story, I tune out and watch the whole thing the next day.
Good.
And I'm sure Dick and Sally do too.
Oh yeah, I've got notes. I got a note recently from Dick. I don't know if I got something incorrect or whatever, but yeah, I want to talk to you about that. But no, but it is. You really did a great inspiration for that too, Bill, because you realized how important it was for all of us to get together and have that brotherhood. Because I'll bet you I could go around this room right now and I could just say, okay, what were you doing with as far as staying connected to the business since you went off into other things? And it just like Jim said, we talk, we talk for, like, we just spoke yesterday and it could have been 20 years ago. I saw a couple of hands go up there.
I have to leave. I just want to tell you this meeting was very, very meaningful. And thank you very much to all of you for being who you are and letting me join you every Friday that I can. And the memories are really something. Got to go. Have a great weekend, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Bye, Dick.
Hey, thanks a lot, Dick.
See you,
And
Dick.
hopefully I don't miss anybody here, but if we do send this, hopefully we're going to be sending this along to Pam at some point. So just, running across the dais here, we've got Bill Rock, we got Pete Salant, we got John Landry, Bob Craig, Pat Sheehan's over there, Lee Gordon, Ed Bruder, Clark Smith, Jim Harrington, the judge, Hal. We got Dave Nagel down there. Bill Hennessy was just piped in with us. Tracy Carmen and Jim Levin. And I don't know. I think Ted Daligu had to leave. Did I miss anybody else?
Yeah, Bart had to leave too.
Yeah, Bart did.
Oh yeah, Bart, Bob Marks, and he had to leave. But so I just wanted Pam to know that. But and anybody else have anything you'd like to add? I know there's so many things about Walt, and this has been terrific. But anything else you'd like to add?
And
Just
Ron,
that,
Ron
as
Pell left.
Walt would say, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Lee?
I was going to say Ron Pell was here and he had to leave as well.
Oh God, I didn't see that. There's so many people up. Thank you guys. There's so many people up here in front of me. I appreciate that.
Ed Broder for what he did. He did a beautiful job for that tribute to Walt.
Yeah. If you get a chance, WDRCOBG.com. And if you haven't been there, I think everybody has. But there's so many great things that you can skate through there with that Ed's put together about the station and some other stuff too, POP and some other things. But
I mean, I found out stuff about me that I didn't even know.
Hey, Steve.
Is it truthful?
Absolutely.
It's so important. Thank you, Steve.
No, thank you guys. It's important. I know that he's meant so much to pretty much all of us. So thank you. And Bill Rock, I especially want to thank you for putting that video together and your grandson up there helping out and my my gal Angela's daughter Shelby for hopefully showing me how to get this thing started.
Hey,
So
Steve.
one thing more I'd like to say, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
One thing about everything everybody said is I was considered Walt the Renaissance man. He had a lot of interests, a lot of different things he used to do. And I just take him out on the boat. He used to love boating. When he talked about aviation, because I was very big into that, he told me about his experiences with it. He would often give me advice, and I would take his advice. And I said to him at one point, I said, you know, Walt, if you took your own advice, you'd be doing 10 times better than you are now, because he was a very smart man and a very good friend, a very dear friend.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and I'm sorry to interject in this as an interloper. I wish I could do this every week. This is so much fun. I always watch the tape of this, but I mean, Clark and I know each other pretty well. I don't know anybody else, but you guys to me are you guys were my heroes, and I just want to say thank you because you know, without most of you guys, I wouldn't have my life, my whole life. I mean, because radio, you know what it's like, and I grew up listening to these wonderful voices and great personalities, and you know, DRC and POP. You know, I could hear Boston and New York when I was growing up, and Hartford radio was way better. It just was. I mean, these are the archetypes for what radio was, and I wish still was. We try. I know Clark's trying with his little company, and I try with mine, but it's tough out there to do real radio. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody on the call because you mean the world to me.
Jim, come when you can, whenever, even if for just a few minutes.
I will. I hate sales meetings. I like being a disc jockey.
Oh God, yeah.
When I was JJ Jackson on I called it triple trash in those days. And I saw Rusty's note about Walt, who meant so much to me, and I had to send him a note thanking him for my $1.85 an hour weekend overnight job when I was in high school. You guys are all the best, and you're all legends to me.
Well, I thank you, and I think that what's really neat for me, I was a kid hanging out with most of you guys, and thank you for putting up with me. And I always do say, I mean, I think for some reason, you know, I mean, I try to keep everything under control here, but I have to believe it's Charlie Parker channeling it because he was your PD, he was your program director, and I'm just trying to, you know, I don't know. I guess I say I'm the yeah, well, he was the leader. He was definitely he's the leader of the band. We all know that one.
Well, you need to do more rhyming.
Oh, well, Lee Gordon will tell you when I would write some copy, he'd go, Charlie Parker lives.
I'm still reading a memo that he wrote, Steve.
What?
I'm still reading a memo that he wrote 50 years ago. Because, I mean, if you knew Charlie, his memos were long. I mean, you know, and you had to read it, and they were literary masterpieces. I mean, it was like, holy smokes, what's he's and it took him a while to get to the point, but they were classic Charlie. And I always thought he should have been a writer. He should have been a writer for TV. You know, I think he's with you, Steve. When you say you channel him, I mean, the fact that we're all here, you know, and we all still feel the way we feel.
And the way you handle all of us and putting it all together. And I never worked for Charlie, but I almost did, and I wish I had, and you do remind all of us of him.
Well,
you know, Jim, Charlie really was a writer on a regular basis for about 8 or 9 years, from about 1960 to 68. He used to write the weekly DRC column that was published in the TV section of the Hartford Courant. And they'd be, I don't know, 8 or 9 column inches, and it was all station related stuff. And they were very clever. A lot of it had the rhyming stuff, but that was all Charlie's work.
But I'll tell you, some of the greatest writing and what he really enjoyed doing was writing for my sister's kindergarten classes or anything else. He would give her great things to be able to play with the kids. So, and he also did a very good job, as long as we're coming around to this time of year. he loved to kind of coordinate things at the North Pole as the man in the red suit when he would do. We would do a Santa program that would go out to all the different hospitals and stuff, and it was for the kids that couldn't go home for Christmas. But the wild thing was, just because how he would always make sure that while he was talking to these children, he would have something going out there that the parents would somehow pick up on the other meaning and start laughing hysterically. But
didn't he
yeah.
track Santa Claus from the different Buckley stations around the country? Didn't he?
Well, those are the turkeys, Jim.
Oh, those are the turkeys. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'll have to. I know guys have probably seen it, but I'll have to resend that as we're coming up on Thanksgiving. The Charlie Parker endless memo about exactly how the birds got here from one news department to news department to news department across the country.
Rick used to go on and on and on about your dad, Steve. I mean, he would talk. I loved Rick, and we had sort of I used to have stations in as I call it, Disgusta, Maine, and he had 100 point something in Portland.
Oh, Rick Buckley.
Yeah. And we used to laugh that, no, I'm not going to buy your stations in Augusta, Jim. But he would, I mean, we'd be at the NAB and I'd tell him how much, DRC, because he was in the band. He gave me my life too. And he'd go on and on and on about your dad. He really loved your dad.
Yeah. You guys are the best. Just better wind things up here. Thank you so much for all the kind words. As always, we're going to try to do it again next Friday, which will be the 22nd of November, and we'll probably, because of being the 22nd, we might want to bring up some remembrances of where you were at when JFK was assassinated. So that might be something that we can talk about next week, and other things. We kind of cover it.
I won't be with you next week, Steve. I'm usually with you like clockwork, but I have a doctor's appointment. So see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Good luck at the doc. Thank you. And also one thing that we can close with, the one thing that comes across here, and we've had that. I remember Joey Reynolds said that, and way back. Walt really always stayed relevant, stayed with the business, and that's what we try to do when we do this. Is remember how great it was, remember where it is now, and some thoughts about where it may be going. I mean, we all stay relevant, I think, by doing this. Relatively speaking, we're all like relatives, radio relatives. We're radio friends again. All right. That's going to take it for this edition of Radio Friends Again. I'm Steve Parker here in Berlin, Connecticut. And please remember, and I think we should try to reach out. Maybe TJ could help us connect with the Broadcasters Foundation of America. We might, Pam may need some help, whether it's financially, emotionally, whatever. That's why the Broadcasters Foundation of America is there. So that's going to do it for this edition. I'm Steve Parker, and we'll catch you next time on Radio Friends Again and Again.